Hello. In this clip, we discuss government intervention in the market. We look at the effect of different types of government interventions in a perfectly competitive market. The two tools that we are going to discuss are first price regulations, second tax and subsidy. Subsidy is a negative tax. We will use the assumption that there are no externalities in the market. Unfortunately, in this course, we do not have time to discuss externalities. But let me then summarize them here so that you know why we choose to ignore externalities for this clip. Externality means that whenever an agent makes a choice that affects the well-being of someone who did not participate in making that particular choice. So, a third party, an outsider, is affected by the choice of an agent. Now, these can either improve the well-being of the third party, and then we call them positive externality, or it can reduce the well-being of a third party, and then we refer to that as a negative externality. An example of negative externality could be when someone smokes and the smoke disturbs others in the neighborhood. Obviously, the individual is not going who makes the decision, so the smoker is not going to bear all the cost of his actions because others will also have to pay a certain cost in terms of utility. Let me now show you a short example of a positive externality. It is now an established fact in the empirical literature that when a country has on average a high level of education, then in those countries crime and corruption tend to be low. Now, this introduces already a positive externality. There is then a private benefit from education, and this is what the agent who makes the decision, the student, is going to receive. And here you can see that as an orange line. So this will be the demand by the individual. On the other hand, by studying, there will be some external social benefit. That is, marginal social benefit will be the marginal private benefit plus the positive external effect. That's the reason why the marginal social benefit lies to the right of the marginal private benefit curve. There are also marginal private costs, and we could introduce marginal social costs as well, but that would really be useful if you had a negative externality. So let us just stay with this particular example. The problem is that the individual is going to make a choice here at the intersection of the marginal private cost and the marginal private benefit lines. That is the individual's choice, but the socially optimal choice would be higher because that seeks to maximize, under certain constraint, the social benefit and not just simply the private benefit. Now, in such cases, obviously, for example, by a subsidy, by keeping the price of education lower than it actually costs, the government could achieve a socially optimal education level. So, in such cases, when there is an externality, then government intervention, for example, by subsidies or taxation, is justified because it will lead to an improvement in welfare. When we have such situation, then the market mechanisms are going to lead to a suboptimal outcome. For that reason, we say that the market experienced a failure. So, externalities lead to market failure, and in case of market failure, government intervention is justified. In the following slides, we will discuss the government intervention when there is no such justification. We start with price regulations. In the previous slide, I already mentioned that there are two basic price regulations, the price floor and the price ceiling. Price ceiling happens when the government sets an upper limit to the price of a good. An example could be a maximum rental price of housing or a maximum price on some basic commodity like energy, fuel, or basic foodstuff. In case of a price ceiling, in case of a binding price ceiling, the by government regulated price is lower than the market equilibrium price. That means that the quantity supplied will be lower than the quantity demanded, so there will be an excess demand or shortage in the market. Price floor, on the other hand, means that the government sets a lower limit to the price of a particular good. That is, the price floor is binding if by the government set price is above the market equilibrium price. This could be used to prevent the consumption or at least to reduce the consumption of certain goods. So in this case, you can see that the quantity demanded will be less than the quantity supplied, so there will be a surplus or excess supply. We can then draw the conclusion that price regulations are going to cause a disequilibrium in the market because it prevents prices from adjusting so that the market can clear. This equilibrium hence remains in place as long as the constraint is still valid. Now let's look at the social welfare effect of such price regulation. The amount of transactions in the market is going to be limited by the lower of the two quantities, quantity demanded or quantity supplied. In case of a price ceiling, for example, the quantity supplied is the lower value, so it will serve as a bottleneck. The total amount traded in the market will equal to the quantity supplied. In case of a price floor, the lowest quantity is the quantity demanded, so it will serve as a bottleneck. Hence, the total transactions will equal QD. As a result, part of the possible market transactions will not happen. This causes a deadweight loss. You can also see that price regulation is going to have a restructuring effect on the consumer surplus and the producer surplus. So price ceiling is going to increase the consumer surplus relatively to the producer surplus, even though possibly both is going to reduce somewhat. And in case of a price floor, this is just the other way around. Of the existing total surplus, more will go to the producers than to the consumers. The next method how government can influence the working of markets is taxation. Tax is, by definition, a compulsory financial contribution which must be paid to the state. Now we are going to limit our investigation into one sort of tax, which is referred to as the specific tax. Specific tax is when the tax is a fixed amount which must be paid per unit of the good consumed. So, for example, a specific tax could be, say, €5 per pack of cigarettes sold. Or similarly, a specific tax could be a toll which you must pay if you want to cross a bridge, and it would be, for example, €1 per person. Let us look at the situation in the market without any tax. This is what we already learned a lot about. Without tax, the supplier will receive exactly the same price what the consumer needs to pay. So we can say that there is a unique price in the market which assures an equilibrium. If you introduce a tax, however, then this tax will be collected at the expense of the price which the buyers must pay and the price which is received by the sellers. That is, the tax will come in between these two prices and drives a wedge between them. This is what we refer to as the tax wedge. You can see that there are two prices in this market. PB refers to the price which is paid by the buyers, and you can see that this is higher than without tax, and the PS denotes the price received by the sellers, which is no lower than the original equilibrium price. Altogether, therefore, the total interactions are going to reduce in the market, and instead of Q star, we will have a new equilibrium QT in the market. The tax, therefore, is going to reduce the amount of transactions that take place in the market, and this causes a deadweight loss. The deadweight loss, therefore, can be calculated as the area of this blue triangle. A new concept should also be introduced because part of the total surplus will now go to the government, and this is denoted here by this yellow rectangle. This is what we refer to as tax revenue.